Here we are in Gettysburg. We're in the town. My beautiful wife admiring my
not look at me.
Meta glasses. Really gotta admire some of these older homes. And this is where we are staying. The 1863 Inn of Gettysburg.
A long time ago.
Someone is very excited.
Here.
This hotel is rumored to be haunted by a former worker. We did not know it was haunted
Oh, Dad, that's not natural.
before
Dad, that's not natural.
we made the reservation, but cool to find out, see if anything happens.
Follow. Right. I acknowledge you, George.
Nice view of the
This is nice.
town. And here we are in the room. Very nice. And we are at Little Round Top, at the top of the hill. This is the New York Infantry Monument, 44th. And we are at the top of the monument. Area down there, you can see the rocks. That's Devil's Den. And then behind that is the triangular field.
And I feel like I'm gonna fall.
And the monument for the 20th Maine is somewhere down that way. Confederacy was trying to come up, but the Union had the high ground. And fortunately, it didn't record the video, it only took a picture, but I'm going to do a little explanation of the heroism of the 20th Maine at the Battle of Little Round Top. They really saved the day. They were at the far south end of the line, and they were told by their commanding officer that they had to hold that position at all costs. They could not retreat, because if they retreated, they would have, the Alabama soldiers from the Confederacy would have swept the line and would have basically went right down and took out the Union forces. So the Alabama soldiers kept charging up the hill repeatedly, and the 20th Maine, they were pretty much down to their last round. So Joshua Chamberlain, who was commanding the 20th Maine, ordered a full bayonet charge down the hill, which really caught the soldiers from Alabama by surprise, and they actually routed them and prevented them from sweeping the line. And here is the monument honoring the 20th Maine. Now, little side story is when Chamberlain came up here maybe 20 or 30 years after the battle, he saw they had this wall erected, which is basically just showing the line markers of where the 20th was, and he was very upset, and he said, he made the comment, I want it documented that this was not here. We had nothing to hide behind when the Confederates were charging up the hill at us. So he was not happy at all when he saw this little wall here. He said, we had nothing to hide behind. Here's one of the line markers for the 20th Maine, and soldiers from Alabama kept charging up the hill to try to sweep the line.
Okay.
And we are at my favorite spot of the battlefield. And this is Devil's Den. And those rocks right there are all natural formation. It's called actually Devil's Den going back from the Indians that populated this area years before. This area here is called the Bloody Pen because of all the troops from the Confederacy that were killed here. And we're going to check out Devil's Den.
Get up there.
And if you're a Civil War buff, this is a very famous scene or area where a picture was taken. Now, this was a staged photograph, but a Confederate sniper was shot and then later moved to this sniper area. And very similar to where Gino is laying, pretty much in that area. Thank you for reenacting, Gino.
No problem. Anytime. Please
Get the bugs out of your hair.
And there's dirt all over you. And this area here is known as the Triangular Field. If you're facing Little Round Top, Devil's Den is down there, and then the Triangular Field is right here. And this is actually one of the more haunted areas on the battlefield as far as the battlefields go. Famous story is a reporter was up here with a camera crew doing a story, and the guy that was with him was telling him that everybody comes up here has problems with their cameras, their batteries getting drained. The reporter laughed and said, "Oh, well, we have, you know, new equipment, batteries are full charged, we're good." And suddenly the cameraman said, "My battery just went down to about 20%, which caught the reporter by surprise. And he said, "Well, did you charge it?" And he said, "Yeah, I charged it." And the guy started to laugh. Continuation of the Triangular Field. I actually had a similar experience as the news reporter and the cameraman from my last video. Had an 8-hour battery for my camcorder, fully charged, popped it in first time up here. We were only here maybe about a half hour, 45 minutes, and went from 8 hours to about 30 minutes of battery time left in a very short amount of time. We ended up leaving, went back to our hotel, was back up to 8 hours. And here we are at Pickett's Charge. That is the Robert E. Lee Monument. And Confederate troops lined up in these woods back there. They started the cannon fire to weaken the Union lines. Was up there. And their target of where they were shooting for was, if you could say, believe that is the copse of trees right there. That was the focal point of where the Union line was, where they were aiming for. And they marched that way. And the battle, it did not go well. James Longstreet really did his best to try to talk Lee out of it, but Lee proceeded with the charge anyways. Longstreet led it. Pickett was just one of the commanding generals. It's known as Pickett's Charge because his division was annihilated. He suffered near total casualty loss of his division. but this is the Confederate side of it. When Pickett was on his way back, Lee was at the rear of the line, and he saw Pickett and told him to get his men and get ready for a defense of the rear of the line in case the Union came after them. And Pickett looked at Lee and he said, "Sir, I have no division." And Pickett blamed Lee for the loss of his men for the rest of his life, according to the story. And that is the copse of trees that the Confederate charge was aimed at. That was their focal point. And if you look all the way down there, this is where we just were. That is where they marched from. Now, interesting thing is there's a road that goes in between the field, the charge. That was there back then. And basically they were climbing over the fence to continue the march. So basically, if you're, say you're 6 foot tall, you're climbing up the fence and you have the line right here, and they're shooting down. They have their sharpshooters out, cannon fire, the whole 9 yards. You just basically turned a 6 foot target into about a 10 foot target when you're trying to jump over that. This is where the Union line was. You can see right there the markers. And that is the copse of trees where they were aiming for. And this is the monument where Lou Armstead fell. He was on the general in the Confederate Army. He was best friends with General Winfield Hancock, and Armstead was distraught that he had to fight against his best friend. He was very upset, and they both were wounded in Pickett's charge. This is where Armstead fell, and Rebel Rich said Hancock fell down there, and they were both actually taken to the same barn where they were treated, but Armstead eventually died from his wounds. Okay, and here we are at the original National Homestead at Gettysburg. This was an orphanage, and we often hear of victims of the war being the soldiers, and wasn't always the case. This orphanage, the headmistress did unspeakable atrocities to the kids that were here. There was physical abuse, torture, didn't feed them. She would lock them down in the basement, in a dingy basement. She did have one of the older kids there that was basically like her muscle and would torture the kids as well. By the time it was discovered what happened, and she had fled, she was never brought to justice. But this is a very tragic sight, and it's supposed to be one of the most haunted buildings in Gettysburg. You could actually tour it, but just wanted to share this. And this is the Jenny Wade House. The Jenny Wade House is the only civilian casualty of the Civil War. She came down, I believe it was to her sister's house, because they thought where it was too dangerous because of the war. So she came down to right here, and she was baking bread for her boyfriend who fought for the Union. And a sniper was across the street and fired at the soldier, missed. And this is a shot of the door where Jenny Wade was shot by the bullet. There's the bullet hole. It went in there, and that's where she was killed. Okay, they wouldn't let us videotape inside the house, so I'm just going to give a little summary of what happened. She was actually bent over making the bread, getting the dough ready. That door was open going into the living room, and you could see where the bullet hole went through the door, struck her, and killed her. And this is a picture of Jenny Wade. She was 19 when she died.
And here we are at Gettysburg National Cemetery. And the story behind this is during the battle, basically they buried soldiers where they were. They had mass burial pits. There's a burial pits that were over on McPherson's Ridge by the Eternal Flame. They basically buried them where they fell. The problem is, as time went on, I mean, this was all farming land, you know, the bodies began to come up. So what they did was they created a cemetery where they moved the soldiers down. And some of the markers you'll see on there, basically, you know, they might find an arm or a leg, or they couldn't identify them. So basically, there's a lot of markers that, you know, they can't identify the victims. You can see these are markers where they may have just found limbs or a head or what have you, where they couldn't identify the victims, which is pretty tragic. And even to this day, I mean, they did find human remains from the battle as recent as 1996 alongside a railroad cut. So, I mean, you know, there's still bodies that are still out there that were never found or moved. And we are here at this cannon. And while cannons were definitely very devastating weapon in the war, one of the more devastating weapons, though, was what's called a canister shell. Basically, in layman's terms, imagine a shotgun shell that could actually go inside of a cannon. The balls that were in the shell were maybe a little bit smaller than a golf ball, and it caused devastation. It could take out several soldiers at once, and depending on how close you were, was basically how much they would actually find of you, if you catch my drift. And this is the New York Infantry, the Irish Brigade, and this is the monument for them. And the dog was their mascot, Sally, who was killed in the battle. And this is at the base of Round Top. Round Top is somewhere up. The little Round Top is up in that direction there. And this is the Gettysburg Address Monument. This is a monument commemorating one of the most famous speeches in our country's history. And the monument commemorates Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, November 19th, 1863. The address was delivered about 300 yards from this spot up along the Upper Cemetery Drive. The site is now marked by the Soldiers National Monument, which I believe it's that way, I think.
And here we are at General Meade's headquarters. He was commander of the Union troops during the Battle of Gettysburg. Would be later replaced by Ulysses S. Grant. Meade was severely criticized by Lincoln after the battle that he didn't go after the Confederates when they were fleeing Gettysburg after the Battle of Pickett's Charge, to finish them off. And this is where his headquarters was.